welcome to another episode of Hard Factor, presented by the Barstool News Network. It is Monday, June 1st, 2020. And anything happened this weekend, guys? I don't know if we have much to report on today.
Yep, that's it. We're done.
I wish.
Yeah. Okay.
Talk to you tomorrow.
That was okay. Obviously, shitloads happening in the world right now. We covered a lot of the George Floyd murder last week, and we're going to continue that again today with the majority of this show being all about what happened in Minneapolis and then the riots afterwards, and hopefully, maybe some silver linings if there are any at all. So,
could you believe that 30-something white guys didn't grasp the seriousness of the situation last week?
Yeah. Our bad on not replacing Florida Man Friday with
little tone deaf
with the riot news, but we are going to correct that today. So Pat, get us home.
All right, guys. So as Will said, we're going to get into all aspects of what's going on in this country, but I think it's important to start with a little context, right? There's civil unrest in the streets. That's what we're reviewing. And there's a lot of discourse on the internet right now. There's a lot of discourse on social media because obviously what happens when there's severe civil unrest is it's ugly. It's not pretty. Nasty things happen. But there are reasons for those things in some respects, and there's certain motivations that I think we need to be a little bit more open-minded to. So I'm just going to give a little context, and these are talking points that we've kind of gone over before, and some of them are tired talking points, but I personally started thinking about them this weekend in somewhat of a different context, and I think maybe it would be valuable to revisit them. So starting out, guys, I want to point out the United States was one of the last major countries to abolish slavery, and that was in 1865. I know that we talk about, hey, this country was built on the backs of black slaves, but it really was, and it's not something that
Not only that, Pat, slavery stopped in 1865, but black women didn't even have fully protected voting rights until 1965, 100 years after that.
exactly.
and separate but equal, right? Are you going to get into all this?
I am. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, I think it's important we kind of revisit this stuff. And look, we've always known this. We've always known that, like, look, of course, it's a dirty little secret because we're proud as Americans, right? We're proud to be Americans. We tout ourselves as the greatest country in the world. That's part of what our leaders have told us. That's part of our propaganda, if you will, as a motto.
We are.
Yeah.
Well, that's not propaganda.
Pat,
America is number one.
I think we are, and I think that we're going to, this situation is going to make us stronger.
Agreed.
We better, otherwise we're not number one.
What I mean is we tout that we're number one, and I think when we're number one, we're number one. It's easy to forget that there's some fucked up shit in our past. There's some really fucked up shit in this country's past that brought us to the place we are today. And one of the things that made us number one, guys, was being able to essentially print money with black people doing slave labor and grow the cotton economy in the 1800s, which was the biggest export in the world. And I think it was the South in the 1860s or 1850s, had the fourth biggest GDP of any country in the world. We're just talking about the South of America, not the entire country. So it's like, look, we were able to build on the backs of something horrible. And as you said, Will, it wasn't until even 1965, right, where things kind of, I think there was the last major civil rights act passed for African Americans.
Jim Crow ended then.
Jim Crow ended in 1956. So, we said in 1865, no more slavery.
Officially.
And then they said, okay, cool, you're free, black people, right? It wasn't like that. They were fucked. They couldn't do shit because there was so much hate and there was so much systemic built-in racism where people didn't see black people as equal. So they put it in the Jim Crow laws where it's like, you're free, man, but you can't actually be free. You can't do things like they would put laws in that prevented them from being full humans.
Well, even before that, when you skipped ahead, like they had the 3/5 compromise, making black people 3/5 of a human being after
in terms of how they were counted on
to vote and shit, and the census and shit. Like there's
So the Jim Crow laws, 1954 segregation ended, 1965 the Voting Rights Act, which is signed that removed the use of literacy for people of African American descent to have to vote. So guess what? It's like the school system isn't teaching black people to vote. The school system and the government systems are treating them like second-class citizens. And they're not learning to read. So they're using this terrible systemic racism. This is the example of systemic racism. Like, you want to come to the poll and vote and be an American citizen? Well, cool. Can you pass this literacy test? right? So that was what the Voting Rights Act was in 1865. And I want to point out, guys, that happened in the Senate.
Did you say 1865?
I'm sorry, 1965. 1965.
Yeah.
So that passed 77 to 19 in the Senate, and
19 guys.
19 guys thought,
I'm calling
nah.
them guys because back then I don't think there were too many gals. 19 guys didn't want it, huh?
Yeah, and 85 members of the House of Representatives didn't want it. So essentially 1/4 of the elected officials in this country did not want to abolish a literacy test before you had to take a vote, which was clearly used to keep black people down. So I just want to point out also, it was probably really hard to enjoy a Beatlemania, right? It was really hard to enjoy Beatlemania when you were still being so oppressed by your country that you couldn't go vote, honestly. And there were people trying to prevent you from voting. The Beatles came over in 1964, I think. So it's
what
like
does Beatlemania have to do with
well,
it?
I think it's important as white people to relate that like our parents passed that on to us. Like, what was the biggest thing that happened when they were kids? The Beatles.
Beatlemania?
The
No,
Beatles.
that's you because you come from a hippie family, Pat. That's you.
Hippies.
No, that was not the biggest thing for every family.
Hold on, it's a
Beatlemania.
It's a
Get the
link.
fuck outta here.
It's a link to give context.
Okay. I can't believe not everyone was raised on the backbones of Beatlemania.
Everyone was, Mark, and it's not hippie shit either. Anyway, guys, I think it's just important to kind of revisit that stuff and to understand the context of how we got to where we are, right? So it's just there's a system that has been slow to change.
Oh, dark past. We have a dark past with race relations and also, relations with, minority populations and then also females and too. It's like America hasn't been the most accepting. It's been the white man's country, and they've, been very slow and reluctant to give up any type of power from the start.
My wife and I like to joke at our house, and it's not a very, I guess it's not funny thinking about it in context, but we like to joke around and like we do. Who rules the world? Girls. Was it the Spice World song?
That was it was Beyonce.
Or Beyonce. Was it Beyonce? Beyonce. That's even worse than I'm saying this. But then we replaced that with rich white men is what we do as a joke. And then
That's true.
That was like the founding fathers. That was their thing. They were like, you needed to be a landowner and a man and a white man to vote.
Right.
Exactly. It's like, and slowly
the same
moved to a better
constitution
place.
that people that tout patriotism, and I'm a patriot myself, but the people that use patriotism the wrong way, they tout the Constitution. We believe that all men are created equal, right? What a joke! What a joke!
There was a big.
Well, the
big
Three-Fifths
asterisk there at the
Compromise came
time,
100 years after that.
Right.
And all men are created equal except for black men are 3/5.
And a lot of people will make an argument saying, well, it's been they abolished slavery 200 years ago. Come on, or almost 200 years ago. It's like, guys, guess what? It ain't changing. It ain't changing fast enough. This is a byproduct of that.
Well, right. The last civil rights legislation, Pat, like you mentioned, was in like 65, right? And so
64 civil rights
64.
Act.
So
yeah.
So and then the voting rights after that.
Yep.
65. So then there's like there's going to be like there's been iterative changes in the way race relations happened in America from the start, and then this is the next evolution. But we got to be better from this going forward.
Right. So and there's a couple police I think statistics we should put out there. So guys, according to the nonprofit Mapping Police Violence, 99% of police killings from 2013 to 2019 have not resulted in officers being charged with a crime. I think that right there tells you there's something wrong.
So the issue there, and I'll get to this in my section a little later, is that right now police basically are absolved of any wrongdoing if they, kill somebody in the line of duty if they feel that their life is in danger. Right. And so right now, and obviously when you have, lawyers protecting you through your union and everything, and you have that rule in existence, it gets abused. And it leads to this situation where, it's almost impossible to prosecute an officer.
Right.
Especially before body cams and all that existed.
Right.
I mean, it was fucking impossible.
And
cameras are really changing the game. That's why this all happened, is because we could see George Floyd.
But it's also important to note that, the vast majority of police officers are great people. It's not.
Yeah, I don't think that's even up for debate, really.
That shouldn't be up for debate.
I think it's more. Well, look, here's an example. You look at you just Google police shooting on YouTube, and you'll find 5 easy that are black and white, clear situations of a man being shot to death for no reason. And
Yep.
body cam, and these range from 2014 to today. So it's like you have 5 examples right there, and 99% of them are unprosecuted.
It's several times a year for sure.
So we're not talking about that. I think the more important thing what we're talking about is what is systemic racism, and what is our perception, what is the country's perception. I want to point this out. I don't know if you guys saw that video on Twitter that was coming out about it was a woman shooting outside of her high-rise building down at the ground. I think it was Chicago, and it was a Macy's, and a group of people were running into the Macy's to loot it, and the people in the background who were shooting the video, it sounded like a white girl's brunch. I'm not positive, but that's based on the voices. That would it sound like. And one of the white girls said, "This is not what George would have wanted." And I think
does she mean George Washington?
No, she means Floyd.
George Floyd.
Yeah, so
what George Floyd would have wanted. I mean, how does she?
Right. So
how is she presuming to be in that position?
And I think that's what I want to use as a point before we move on to the next section. And I think I have to say to white Americans, as a white American myself, we can't speak for George Floyd or black people whatsoever. No. And we also can't pretend. We can't completely understand the pain and frustration of them not having a voice. And what we can't do.
I don't think we can even begin to understand. I wouldn't say completely understand. I don't think we can even really begin to understand.
Yeah, you haven't been. Nope. You haven't gone through those experiences. If you're not in the shoes of
oppression for like a white male is like what are the talking points like? You're pissed about affirmative action, so you got to go to Cal Berkeley if you have a 4.2 instead of like Harvard. Like fuck off. Like,
but this comes from lack of understanding.
There's no oppression. There's none. Prejudice. There's no hardships.
You're right. And truth be told, look, we can't know what it's like to be black. And look, a lot of people like everyone on this show, probably a lot of you guys listening at home, you don't like inequality. You don't want inequality. You have people that you're friends with that are African American, and you sit there saying, we're the same. Like we can, right? Like I will fight for you to make sure you get the same opportunity. And that's not your job as a white person. Your job as a white person is just listen.
Yeah.
And realize and acknowledge that there's a difference in the way that you're treated in this country because of your skin color. And as much as you want it to be equal today, it's not. So that's our job.
Pat, to that point, I mean, listening is definitely a part of the job, but other than that, it's out. Like no one really knows. Like a lot of people are calling for action. Like speak out. Don't be just complacent.
Agreed.
And no one knows. It's because it hasn't worked yet.
I think here in this role, you can be supportive. Certainly,
yes, 100%. Everyone can be supportive.
Everybody could be supportive.
I guess
of
what
the Black
I mean
Lives
is
Matter movement.
For sure.
But you can't sit here and presume if you haven't gone through that same type of treatment. From the public and from people in positions of power, you can't presume to know what the answers are, what the real problems are, because you just don't know. You haven't lived that life.
You can sympathize, you cannot empathize. And I'm not saying don't act. I'm not saying that whatsoever. What I'm saying is probably the most valuable thing you can do is support your black brothers and sisters by listening and then looking inward and saying, what prejudices do I have? How can I face them? How can I come to terms with the prejudices that I have? Because we all have them. And how can I work them out myself? How can I explore ideas myself so that I'm not pissed off when I hear about affirmative action, like a lot of white male Americans in this country are? How do I get past that? How do I get to a place of true equality?
Well, I mean, I think about maybe not necessarily that specific issue, but race in general, right? Like you can't be looking at other human beings and thinking that they are in any way less than yourself because of a pigmentation, So
except for the homeless, right?
Yes.
Well, that's
my bad. All right, sorry.
Because they're dirty.
Just trying to throw a joke.
Yeah, it's true. And
15 minutes in.
One more thing before we move. Look, before you judge black people on Twitter or social media or in the streets who seem to be encouraging what you think might be an irrational response to the situation, like violence, right? When no one's condoning violence, but just understand that right now they're pissed off, and right now they want to watch the world burn, and that's. I'm sure there's a time that people like that will look back. Not all of them, but some of them. And what I'm saying is, before you judge
we're gonna get into the majority of people that want to watch the world burn are
agreed,
more like Antifa and those fuckheads. But we'll get into that.
There's an uncontextual frustration that these people are feeling, and you just need to respect that in some respects. That's kind of what I'm getting at.
They're frustrated.
Absolutely,
and they have a right to be.
And George Floyd, his memory, everybody saw that video, and you are, if we don't improve race relations in America after that video of him being murdered by 3 cops while one watched, and then, you know, all of these riots in the U.S. and worldwide. If you can't improve, we're definitely not number one anymore.
Watch a lot of videos of, you know, Killer Mike's speech. Watch a lot of videos. Read Brandon's blog on Barstool Sports. Watch some Twitter videos of the peaceful protesters, the 31-year-old guy talking to the 16-year-old kid and the 46-year-old guy. Yeah.
We covered
there's a frustration. There's a frustration there that is warranted and needs to be sympathized with.
Yeah, and it's because, as I'll go over, this shit, like Will said earlier, has been going on, and this has been the fucking problem with every single one of these bad riots for a long time. It's this police brutality and this bullshit, and it hasn't changed, obviously. So, I mean, you can Jesus Christ.
Yeah, we got to make a change.
All right, let's talk about this particular round of protests. In some cases, riots. Let's get into some like kind of statistics, if you will. The protest started in Minneapolis Tuesday night, peacefully after George Floyd was killed on Memorial Day, and obviously it's not just because of George Floyd. That was just kind of what sparked it, but they quickly spread to other cities, moving to New York first, and then by Sunday evening, which was the 6th day and night in a row of protests, mass protests, they'd spread to over 75 cities in the U.S. and some large international cities like Berlin, Toronto, and London even. So it took off. Like it wasn't just Minneapolis. It's the whole country, and now it's international, all with the same kind of sentimentality of we've had enough. 40 U.S. cities issued curfews as of Sunday night across 21 states, the largest issuance of curfews since the aftermath of the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. in 1968. So 3 years after that last act was passed, they killed Martin Luther King. Jr. Shot him. The National Guard was activated in at least 15 states. People are getting hurt out there as well. Videos are all over Twitter. You can see them. Protesters are getting shot in the head and eyes with rubber bullets. Multiple people have lost eyes. Multiple people have lost their lives. At the time of this recording, luckily, it's only been like maybe a handful of people that have died through the protest. It hasn't been a lot, but a lot of injuries.
A lot of hospitalizations. Hospitalizations. Lots of fights going on.
A rubber bullet, guys, is a less lethal ammunition, is not a non-lethal ammunition.
It's less lethal. Yes.
It can kill you.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's got what, like a 5% chance to kill you if it hits you in the head?
I think it's four.
Yeah, it's taken out
total.
some eyes. There's a video on Twitter of someone in Austin today that may or may not be dead. Their limp, lifeless body was being carried by 8 protesters screaming, "Look what you did. You killed him. You shot him in the head with a rubber bullet, and he was bleeding from the head, and they just like gave him to the police, and no one knows if that person's alive." I mean, I guess some people do, but shop owners with knives and swords are getting beat nearly to death. An 18-wheeler barreled through a group of thousands of people blocking I-35 in Minneapolis. Luckily, it was going fast. Luckily, it didn't hit anyone. They all saw it coming, and they got out of the way. The truck driver was arrested. A 20-year-old man was shot and killed in the protest in Detroit. Federal agent Patrick Underwood was shot and killed in Oakland. Another federal agent was injured. J.R. Smith beat the shit out of some little twat that was fucking with his car in L.A.
That was a great video.
Fuck that dude up. Like idiot. Buildings have been destroyed. Shops destroyed. Malls destroyed. Gas stations destroyed. Buildings looted. You name it. Destruction everywhere. Thousands of people were arrested in the U.S. over the weekend, like 3,000 people at least, for violating curfew, for burglary, for damaging property, assault, other crimes. 23 people were arrested in London's Trafalgar Square during their London protest. Trafalgar, thank you. Yeah. That's what I meant to say. Sorry, Andrew. Some police officers did a great job de-escalating by joining in protests like in Flint, Michigan, or talking to the crowd of protesters like the officer from Atlanta. That's
a really cool video. Liz Gonzalez tweeted it. If you haven't seen that video of the Flint chief of police.
Join the protest. Some officers also escalated the situation. 2 were arrested in Atlanta on Sunday after Mayor Bottoms, who had a great speech this weekend, ordered that they be charged, which is what leadership should have done in Minnesota.
His name is Mayor Bottoms?
No, it's her name. Jesus Christ, Pat. Have you met Keisha Bottoms?
Keisha Bottoms.
Yeah. You don't know who Keisha Bottoms is? Jesus Christ.
I've been on the news all weekend.
She's like one of the top stars of this entire thing. She might be vice president by the time
it's
it's all said.
I like her last name.
Oh yeah, we're getting to that later.
She ordered them to be charged, and they were within 24 hours for just tasing 2 college students.
I mean, this was
Atlanta outclassed Minnesota by a billion miles.
Every city so far.
Yeah, every city. There's a video on Twitter of an Austin. Yeah, I already talked about that. The Austin person that got shot in the head. Protest in D.C. outside the White House caused the White House to go on lockdown all weekend. Trump was rumored to be taken to a bunker briefly. At least 60 Secret Service agents were injured during the protest. It's unclear if Trump tweeted about potentially releasing the most vicious dogs and ominous weapons from the bunker, or if it was just when he was on lockdown. The vast majority of the protests were peaceful, guys, but there were riots in several major cities. There was looting in several major cities. Although from the looks of the videos all over the internet, it certainly wasn't all black people or even predominantly black people causing the destruction. Seems like in Portland and a lot of places it was Antifa. I'm talking about 90-pound white kids soaking wet with PFT-length hair and stupid bandanas.
And not all kids.
Yeah.
The old guy in D.C. who was hammering the street was like 60, and he was wearing like a Antifa all black get up.
Yeah, and the kid at the CNN building in Atlanta was that little fucker with the skateboard. He was the one that was starting all the shit, trying to break the glass. He was the one that was being the most aggressive.
Oh, and in Reno, there was a riot Saturday night, and the Black Lives Matter protest was happening across the street from City Hall. All of a sudden, 4 unrelated white guys come up and just bash the windows out of City Hall with baseball bats. Who are they, right?
See, and that's interesting. So, Will, when I was doing my research, Reno has one of the worst unarmed black men being shot statistics of any city in America. I'm curious what. So, like, there's unrest there, and the protests were not African Americans who were creating the shit.
Well, the riots were
that was the theme.
Were caused by
most of
the riots were started in Reno by 4 white guys who came up with baseball bats and started destroying property. When the Black Lives Matter protest, the official Black Lives Matter protest, was across the street, peacefully protesting and chanting George Floyd's
They
name.
had to cancel the Black Lives Matter protests in Austin, but they canceled them pretty much everywhere, like on Sunday, because they realized Antifa was just steering them in the wrong direction and rioting.
Yep.
But the protests continued. Obviously,
we should point out that 40 million Americans have filed for unemployment, which I don't think we should focus on. But
absolutely.
It's fueling stuff for sure.
The lockdown, the unemployment.
But I mean, can you at least let the fucking black people have their protest Antifa? For fuck's sake, you stupid fucking assholes. Leave it alone. You're trying to take over their goddamn protest, and then you give them a bad name by fucking causing more destruction than them, and it's just absolutely ridiculous.
It's pathetic. It's pathetic.
Fuck
and
Antifa.
then guess what the news shows?
Exactly. The protest in wherever went violent. They don't say because of Antifa. By the way, and Attorney General Bill Barr declared them a terrorist group. They're now off Twitter after they tweeted out we should be attacking the suburbs tonight. Now they're banned from Twitter. They're a terrorist group, and all those fucking losers and incels from their mom's basement are going to get sent away for a long time.
Yep, same treatment as the Klan now. Yep. So good for you, Antifa. Way to get yourself on that list.
They are pieces of shit. And yeah, I mean, it sucks. It's bad. There's no real indication of when the protest may stop, or if they just will pause and then resume on the weekend later this week. I mean, it seems like until something's changed legislation-wise with rhetoric from leadership and all the above, I don't think they're going to just completely stop all of a sudden. It seems like the genie is out of the bottle for real this time, and people are mad as hell, and they're not going to take it anymore. So, more to come on when cities might stop protesting, but I just don't, until something changes, I doubt it's going to be completely just back to normal Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
No.
It's going to take some time. It's a horrible problem.
So. I mean, the real bullets are coming, unfortunately. And
that's the sad part. Non-lethal rounds for now from the National Guard.
I beg to differ a little bit, because I think that video that came out Sunday night where the Antifa guy was trying to free the brick right from the sidewalk to throw it, and the African American protesters grabbed him, threw him to the police, and there was an African American boy who was caught up with the Antifa guy, and the cops were like, all right, you go back and you can protest, bro, because that's your right as an American. That's what you should be doing.
Right, Pat, but that's the protest. You need to separate the scumbags that are looting and the protests.
It's hard to separate the Antifa from...
Well, there's different groups, right? There's looters, and then there's Antifa who are trying to incite stuff.
But that was big on the cops. Big on the cops.
Yeah,
the cops
sure.
saw what was going on.
But that's
most of the people involved are big people, Pat, in all groups. Police, protesters. Most people are good. It's just hard to separate when there are the small amount of awful apples, mainly from Antifa. They're good at what they do. They're good at inciting. They're good at blending in. They've made it an art form. Luckily, they're finally a terrorist group, but like they're going to continue to play a part in this.
Right. They've escalated it so much, and then guess what happens when the real bullets come out? More shit happens where the police are being brutal.
Right. Worst problem.
Yeah,
More police brutality. That's not what you want. We got to go the opposite direction.
Right. So yeah, it's fucked
So
up.
that's like an update on the cities and stuff. Wes, what do you got for us?
Nice, thank you. Well, unfortunately, I just want to give you guys like a little history of some of the shit like this that's happened in our country.
Fun research.
Yeah, some fun research looking at some of the other riots in our country, and I got to tell you from the research, it's all about mostly race, right? It's based on race, injustice. Before 1964, civil rights was passed, it was a lot of fucking white people attacking black people. Those were the riots, right? White people going into black neighborhoods, terrorizing them, and then it now because of the police brutality. Now
that was back in '68.
I mean, that was back in the 1900s or early, late 1800s. 64 is when the Civil Rights Act was passed. But let's go to the Watts riots, the first one that kind of like is the big one that people talk about, right? 1965, a year after civil rights, August 11th through the 17th, a black woman was pulled over for reckless driving. It got she was pregnant. It got out that the police were, they injured her. They were not fair with her. Police brutality on a black pregnant woman. Riots started. Six days of unrest, 32 deaths, $40 million in damage. National Guard, 3,500 arrests. This is like, this is one of the big ones that people talk about in today's, narrative when we talk about riots in the country. 1968, like we said, the assassination of Martin Luther King, over 100 cities. 40 deaths, 2,500 injuries, 15,000 arrests.
Wow.
It was really, really big. Then you go, I mean, and there's just countless, big and small, just countless based on race, right? I mean, it's terrible.
Not a ton has changed.
Well,
not a ton has changed.
Huge issue. You're right.
Not a ton has changed. That's the thing. We're right back here, right back to 1965 with this police brutality, which is causing this shit.
Not only we're definitely in the late '60s. We had another rocket launch this weekend. It's like we're like right back in the '60s.
Exactly. So you go to 1992, another huge one, the LA riots. Of course, Rodney King was beat by those 4 officers. It was one of the first ones that was captured on video. Right, we talked about that earlier. With the video has made all this more prevalent.
For people our age, in our age bracket, that was a big.
It was a big one.
I remember that one.
That's why O.J. Simpson
very clearly
is not in jail. Just for those younger cats who don't know, O.J. Simpson essentially being acquitted of murdering 2 humans was more or less retribution for Rodney King. Had a lot to do with it.
You're saying it was a makeup call?
It was a makeup call, 100%.
Okay.
Okay. Well, so what happened there is that once the police officers were acquitted, the riots started. They were acquitted on April 29th, 1982. The riots lasted until May 3rd. 63 people killed, 12,000 arrested, over $1 billion in damage. I mean, I can remember it. You guys can probably remember some of the images on TV. Is crazy. Yeah. 6 years ago, the Ferguson riots, the shooting of Michael Brown. First, there was the riots when he was shot. Then there was the riots when that police officer, Darren Wilson, was not indicted. Then the anniversary of his death, more riots.
Wasn't Eric Garner around then too?
Yeah,
the New York guy that was.
Yes,
he was the first I Can't Breathe. Like, 2014, I think.
We could be here literally all fucking day.
Yeah, we can't list everyone. Yeah.
Talking about these injustices.
But basically,
and the
all
murders.
over the same issue when you're looking at these riots.
The same exact issue, the same fucking issue from the. Like I said, back in the 1800s, it's all race and injustices and that's
they see. Unfortunately, they see black people as different than their own selves. And that's what needs to change.
You got to acknowledge the problem, right? And I think that the cameras, like we were talking about earlier, is a game changer. This is putting it in your face. You can't deny when you look at that video of what happened to George Floyd. You can't look at that and say that there's not a problem there. It's just you would be absolutely insane. So people can't keep sweeping it under the rug.
No. What is that though? Like it's a fear, right? Like the cops are afraid of the black people, and the black people are afraid
the tense
of the cops.
situation escalates, and then there maybe it's the racism that they have.
Maybe
certain cops,
power. Maybe like growing up, a little bit more diversification in the friends groups when you guys are like
Oh,
having
well,
your kids
let me give you
like,
guys a quick example.
I mean,
so
I think it's going
like,
to take
what-
a long time. but-
African
Like, what
Americans,
is-
for example, guaranteed they get treated in hospitals. They have I think I want to say like a 20 or 30% higher mortality rate in childbirth to die, right? And that's the case whether a white doctor is treating them or a black doctor is treating them. So it comes down to the system. It comes down to prejudices. It comes down to ideas. It comes down to not perceiving that person, not seeing that person in the same way as you see yourself. And these are people that aren't necessarily like that. You wouldn't say they were racist, maybe. They're not overtly racist. If you ask them, are you racist? If you ask them, if you said, is it okay to say the N-word? They might say, no, of course it's not okay to say that. But for whatever
Sure,
reason.
but you need a culture change.
Yes,
in
that's
law
what I'm saying.
enforcement, and in the general
Systematic
public.
change.
Yeah.
Yeah, the law. Law enforcement people. I mean, this guy had 18 priors. You can't allow people like that on the fucking force. This shit like this is going to continue to happen. That's just the bottom line. If you don't get rid of these fuckers immediately,
Well,
once
I
they
guess-
start showing signs of this brutality and this power, fucking hunger shit.
the police-
Certainly
police
better
feel like
than
they're
never
untouchable.
being able to. Right.
Yeah.
Certainly better than the situation now, which is like it's nearly impossible to convict an officer.
It looks like Minnesota's had a pretty dark history, police force wise, with attacking minorities and black people to the point where what's left of Anonymous doxed like. They put out a video saying,
Oh, that's
you know,
fucked up, though.
Minnesota,
That's-
you have a horrible. No, that's terrible. They should not have done that.
I mean,
Like
some of those
yeah.
cops have got to be
Well,
out there like protecting people's
the
lives
few-
right now.
The few
Yep.
people from Anonymous, they don't need to be attacked. Their family doesn't need to be attacked. Their kids, their houses. The few people from Anonymous that haven't been arrested are about to get arrested. If that was really Anonymous, that was a mistake on their part. But
Yeah.
but
And the
it,
National
it
Guard-
does bring up the point that Minnesota has a pretty brutal history of police.
Philando Castile. They shot
Those police
Philando
don't
in the
want to
car.
be out there. Yeah, those police don't want to be out there. I mean, the National Guard certainly doesn't want to be out there. They want to be like helping like hurricane victims or some shit. They don't want to be in these fucking riots. I can promise you that. It's they're out there trying to.
But there's hope to be found somewhere, guys. There has to be.
yeah.
Look.
There is.
I mean,
We will
it's
be
been going
better
on for a
as-
long
we will-
time.
We will be better as a society when this is all said and done. 2020 is the worst year ever, but this was a long time coming.
Yeah.
It,
Well,
it feels that way, but judging by the past, I don't know.
I think we need to hear. We need to hear from more
Something's
black
gonna
leaders
change.
too. We need to hear from more black
Legislation.
leaders.
absolutely. Let's move it over
Yeah.
to the next section.
There we go.
Which
Let's
is
talk
all
about
this
legislation,
stuff.
and stuff. Yeah.
I'm going to do reactions
Okay.
and what can be done to help things from the perspective of four white guys, knowing that we're not really qualified to say on this issue, but we'll try. So let's start with the bad reactions first. The bad reactions on Twitter and just over the weekend. And so
hang on, let me stop you. This is kind of like a winners losers type thing.
a little bit.
Sort
of. This I'm going to go over who had a bad showing.
Okay. Yes. Exactly.
In response,
Yep.
a bad showing in response to the entire everything after George Floyd,
Okay.
George Floyd's murder, and then I'm going to go on to a list of people who had great reactions and some things you might want to check out.
Perfect.
So the bad reactions first. First group of people with bad reactions: white people in general. Whether it was a conservative pundit railing about how rioters should be jailed for life, or white people like Pat mentioned earlier, posting nonstop about what they did and what they think about the protests and the riots. Not making it about the Black Lives Matter movement. Just lots of bad tape in general out there for lots of whites from this weekend. So
Yeah.
that was my first
What's the tweet called when you like tweet and it's like it was like George Floyd was on the ground for 8 minutes and blah, blah, like they just do like the whole tweet of like the facts. It's like supposed to be a powerful tweet. I can't tell you how many of those I fucking saw coming from people. Like he was 2 minutes unconscious.
Are you talking about like the MasterCard style commercials?
I guess. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, those tweets. I
On
don't
those
know.
bad look notes, Will, if you're using the word thugs, guys, that's
Oh yeah, we're getting to that.
That's
We're getting
code
to
for N-word.
Right, we're getting to that. We're getting to his reaction. He's also on the bad reaction list.
Yeah.
Local and state government in Minnesota. I should have gotten the names of the mayor, who's completely useless, and the governor, who's also completely useless in Minnesota. It's been a complete dumpster fire. I didn't even care to get their names because they're going to be out of a job.
It's not the
It doesn't
body
even
anymore.
matter.
We know that.
Yeah.
What's that?
It's not Jesse the Body Ventura anymore. We know that.
No, we all wish it was.
The
Anybody
Attorney General
besides
was
these two.
Attorney General's Keith Ellison, right? I know.
Anybody
Yeah,
besides
yeah.
these two should have been in charge in Minnesota. First, the mayor and governor didn't take all 4 cops involved in the murder of George Floyd into custody to stop the riot from occurring in the first place. And in fact, they've done so bad that 3 of the 4 who were involved are still free, with reportedly 2 of them having fled the state. So from the start,
Really?
complete lack of control in Minnesota. Absolute bungle by their government.
They're on the naughty list for sure.
Oh.
Let me butt in for 1 second.
And Klobuchar. Klobuchar
Yeah.
was the prosecutor.
Oh.
Is that what you're gonna say?
No, she had a chance to fire.
She had a chance to
Derek
review
Chauvin,
this guy's-
Derek Chauvin
yeah.
a long time ago, and she let him go. I was gonna say you mentioned fled the state, which leads me back to like the protest. A lot of the violence and looting started from out of state people in Minnesota. They came in to cause problems.
they're on the list. Don't worry, they're bad
flying
reactors.
in.
They're flying in to cause problems. Like
They're bad reactors.
Yeah.
That's for sure. Next up on the bad reaction list after the local and state government of Minnesota, Minneapolis and Minnesota, is federal government. And so far, this has been Charlottesville 2.0 for Donald Trump, in my opinion.
Oh yeah.
From the shooting starts, when the looting starts, tweet to the thugs. Pat mentioned subsequent other shitty tweets demonizing protesters everywhere and blaming
Vicious dogs.
Sleepy Joe. Yeah, vicious dogs. I don't know what Sleepy Joe has to do with this.
Nothing.
Also, Don talked to the Floyd family, who said that he was a shitty listener on the phone and that he didn't really listen at all, and that he just talked over them the whole time.
They said he said what he had to say and didn't listen to us.
Yeah. So Donald Trump has blown it completely on the, on top of the local and state government blowing it already below him. So you have Democrats at the local and state level fucking it up. Then you have a Republican in the White House totally fucking it up. It's just complete meltdown, total fuck ups, and it's unacceptable. This is a serious problem facing America, and we can't have these shitty politicians out there just fucking up our reaction.
They're supposed to be
Unbelievable.
leaders. You're supposed to be a fucking leader. This is your time to shine.
Yeah, and so sorry I got so heated about that, but those were some very, very bad reactions.
Someone said on Twitter the other day, and I loved the concept. It was, I wish that Obama and Bush were giving a joint State of the Union. I wish that someone we identified as a leader. I wish those 2 guys were holding hands, being like, "Let's stop this, America." Instead, we have a politician making it politicized.
Both those guys have their own issues, but they don't have their issues in terms of leadership talk in times of crisis and the messages they send, which is, trying to be positive, trying to unify people as opposed to what's going on right now with leadership.
It's absurd. I think what Trump needs to do, we were talking about what could we do to get better. He needs to work with the Black Caucus now to figure out how he's going to get executive orders and legislations underway to fix some of this shit, to at least start making attempts to figure out how to make changes. Instead, he's just talking about how he's going to kill looters.
Law and order, all caps. What does that even fucking mean?
If he would have had just a semblance of presidentialness and empathy or whatever this week, he could have done a lot of good for himself. He might have won the election.
Imagine if he flown to
Minneapolis.
Imagine if he flown to Minneapolis and he marched with George Floyd's family, which is what needed to fucking happen.
Yeah,
that's what needed to fucking happen.
He's losing. I'll be honest with you. I probably was going to go Trump over Biden in the election, but he has lost me this week.
Before everyone gets, all up in arms and it's like, oh, these 4 fucking libcucks. This is we're bashing the Democrat leadership.
Oh yeah, I just said the Minneapolis mayor, loser. Minnesota governor,
all
loser.
the people that are behind Trump, good for you. But if you can't fucking see that he's bundled this situation, you're a fucking moron.
We could improve it by going and making a change that actually makes a difference. But the way that he reacted to it was horrible.
Terrible. Fucking awful.
Thugs is code word for N-word, guys. Thugs is code word for the N-word.
All of his messages, it's not like all of his messages are like, stop looting and you guys are the worst. We're gonna arrest you. You're gonna be tried. You're gonna be
100% negativity.
We're gonna shoot you. It's all negative. It's all like why isn't it positive? Why isn't
it's the only way he knows how to deal with things.
Not one thing.
Killer
is
Mike
awful.
gave a more presidential speech, in my opinion.
Oh, way more.
Absolutely.
You
Everyone
kidding me?
has.
Well, Joe Biden's speech was more presidential. It was also horrible. He barely made it through.
Joe Biden still has problems remembering anything,
Right.
including his name, but at least he's trying to be positive and trying to. He's trying.
He tried.
He's trying to
God.
bring the country together. He's trying to and Trump is just not. He's dividing even more. And at a time like this, that's fucking disgraceful.
Because he's being
makes you-
selfish because he
shows-
wants to
I
win
mean,
a fucking election right now, and sometimes it supersedes that shit. And he's trying to fucking election posture right now.
He could win the election.
Well,
like
he's
Wes
losing
mentioned.
it.
He's losing
Yeah,
it right
he could.
now.
He's losing. He's lost. He's done way
still,
more harm.
He still could. He needs to do some legislation things and get out of the hole
has
he's
to.
dug for himself. But he's stepped in it big time.
Stepped in a huge pile of shit. All right, next up, the worst reaction. This is my feeling was the worst reaction of all was all those out of towner, people coming in to fly in, to not necessarily protest peacefully, but cause problems. And that is what we covered earlier. Antifa getting tossed onto the domestic terrorist list. So those guys organized that kind of shit, putting bricks out on the street for people to break windows, all that shit, encouraging rioters to start invading white people's homes. And so, the DOJ rightfully tagged them as domestic terrorists after all that. So, they probably had the worst reaction, somehow even worse than the politicians in charge of the municipalities that are, burning. So,
Who does Antifa have like a leader? Like who the fuck is there?
Are you kidding?
it's a group, it's like a
Right,
white
but
supremacy group, except
right.
the
But do they
opposite
have
side,
one
I
guy
guess.
that's like their fucking spokesperson?
His name's
they're like
Darren. If they do,
It's like MySpace Tom, yeah.
No,
Yeah, all right.
they're like a bag. They're like a bag of wind, like a bag in the wind.
It's
Wes.
interesting
They're
to
just-
me because the only thing I ever knew
I
about
didn't
them
know that much about him.
is they punched Richard Spencer in the face.
that was funny. Yeah,
right,
Yeah.
and I was like, yeah, I kind of like this Antifa back in 2016, but then like
they're cowards.
I don't get it.
No,
Like
they
what?
suck.
Why are
They
they,
don't.
trying?
They didn't punch Richard Spencer in the face to face. They came up like from behind
they-
him and hit him.
they
in the
beat
side
up
because
that
that's
Andy-
all they
Andy
do.
No guy.
What's
Andy
the
No,
point?
yeah, Andy
What's the
No.
point of
Yeah.
their
They're
movement?
punks.
The point of the movement is just they are virgins. They're incels.
Well, I think they're communists. They have a sickle and hammer
No,
as their sign.
Right, they're incels. They can't make money on their own. They live in their parents' basement. They don't have anything. So the only thing they have for excitement or thrills is like causing riots. It's like this is their thing that they're good at. The only thing they're good at.
But it seems like if Antifa stands for
suck at
anti-fascist,
that.
it would be like to have some sort of positive outcome.
No.
Well, yeah, they want communism, Pat. Sickle and
Yeah.
hammer. That's what they have
Yeah.
on the sign. So that's the positive outcome
There
they're
you go.
looking for, I think. And now, finally, on to the good reactions. All right, I'm tired of just screaming at this microphone.
Yeah, let's do
and
good
angry.
reactions.
Good reactions. All right, Derek Chauvin's wife. That was the main murdering cop. She divorced him one day after his arrest. Good call by her.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
So-
awesome.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
So insult to injury for Derek. Also, very suspect whether his sperm is functional because she has 2 kids, but neither of them are from him. So
Oh yeah, Derek
that all-
Chauvin's wife was like, "Honey, if this isn't the sign that you were looking for, I don't know what is."
Derek Chauvin's going to get murdered in prison.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I think that's partially why it's very hard to convict an officer because you assume that a lot of that.
Right, and let's
happens.
point out that this is not a first time this guy.
No, we already did.
No,
18
like Wes said,
18
like Wes said, yeah.
violent offenses.
Klobuchar had a chance to stop it. It's a mess. She's out for VP.
Her career's about to be over.
Well, probably over. The one and only Killer Mike. If you haven't seen his speech from Atlanta on, I think, Friday or Saturday night, I mean, the thing was incredible. He was encouraging people in Atlanta to protect their loved ones, not destroy property, because what does that, really solve?
I don't want to be here.
Yeah, and then work for a better tomorrow by taking civic action, as in filling out your census form, registering to vote, and then actually learning about the people in your community and overall who you want to vote for, so that you can help make better improvements for the whole country.
It's like 8 minutes long, and it fucking rocked my world this morning when I listened to it. It was good.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah,
God, I would have loved to see that Run the Jewels Rage Against the Machine tour that didn't happen.
Ooh.
yeah.
His HBO show is really good, too, that came out last year.
Killer
Or
Mike's a beast.
Netflix? Or maybe Netflix.
I think he wins best speech for sure.
Yeah,
like
it was great.
that was the speech of the weekend. Also, another great speech. Atlanta Mayor Keisha Bottoms, who provided amazing leadership for Atlanta and through her work this weekend, in my estimation, is probably now the favorite to be Biden's VP pick. Predictit.org/promo/hard factor 20. If you want to bet on that, she's at like 8 or 10 cents and rising.
Superstar.
So I did a lot of work. I used to do a lot of work in Atlanta. I loved the team there. And this weekend, the way the city handled it, it made me miss that city a lot. That was just...
Our intern Cam's from Atlanta.
Yeah. So just like Atlanta is an amazing city, the USA is an amazing country. We've obviously got major healing to do from our extremely dark history of slavery and segregation like we covered earlier. But what a better time than now, to do all of that. Wes covered, we've been just nonstop rioting against race relations and the problems we have with it forever. Let's do something about it. So one thing I did was I followed the advice of Killer Mike. He kind of, he went after CNN a little bit for all of the fear mongering and race baiting that they do on their channel. And I thought that was a great idea. So I not only unfollowed CNN, stopped watching them, did the same with MSNBC, Fox, Huffington Post, Bloomberg, Breitbart, all those in the garbage can for me. I'm going to stick to...
Good call.
I'm going to stick to people that aren't trying to propaganda my ass all the fucking time.
Agenda-based. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Fuck CNN. They're just as bad as Fox.
Exactly.
They're equally one-sided.
Divisive.
I'm going to toss that hyper-partisan bullshit in the trash just like Killer Mike encouraged me to. And so far, I've been happier for it. And also, finally, I've got some knowledge about what the police world is like on the inside, at least in Texas, from my wife used to do some work down there. And so to me, like I was saying earlier, I think what needs to happen with law enforcement and in the country in general is a culture change. And in law enforcement in particular, 3 things that I see from what she used to work with police all the time was that training, mental health support, and progressive discipline. Those are the 3 things I think you can really improve, right? Cops need more sensitivity training, obviously, so that they approach every situation the same. And they need to be skilled with trauma and stress management, because as stressful as your job is, you're not carrying around, unless you are a cop or a soldier, you're not carrying around a gun and facing situations about, am I going to have to or not shoot another human? And they have to be human enough not to kill a random citizen, even if the situation is hyper tense like it usually is. And so if they do harm the public in any way, then you need to easily be able to weed them out and deal with them more like regular criminals like Pat and Wes were talking about earlier.
I'm going to add one more thing to that, Will. They need to be paid more.
I think in general, this is going to require investment.
To get better people.
It encourages competition. If you're gonna have all these things, what you mentioned, all this training, all this skill set, you need to pay them more. You need to pay the police
absolutely more. And you need more positions, right? This would create positions on the force that didn't exist before. People who are taking care of mental health, people required counseling and stuff like that. I mean, this is stuff that's optional today for officers. And a lot of times they don't do it because the counselors will report back anything they say to internal affairs, and they might get, a sideline for a couple weeks. So it's like there's a whole issue. And then the unions being able to just totally kill all of the attempts to convict people who do make mistakes on the job. And so there's just all kinds of things. You gotta attack it from multiple angles, but you have to do it. I mean, I think that they have to get something going really soon on that. Otherwise, what's the point of this? Otherwise, why are we all so upset if federal government's not going to enforce stuff like this to improve?
Hey, on that point of paying them more, the more you think about that, that's so smart, because it's just like, if you're in a position where your job might be to kill someone, rightfully or not, that's fucking intense, man.
It's ridiculous that they're not. It's ridiculous that they're not paid more.
And going back to
we got a minute left, guys. So
let's talk about steaks real quick, guys. I don't.
No.
Let me finish
No. Let's wrap up the show. This is the radio show. We got a minute left.
Well, let me say something on the mental health support thing. Like they also need access to like Will was saying, mental health support. Like, imagine carrying all that shit that they have to come home with, and not maybe not having them to talk to. They need to be able to free therapy. They need to therapy can fucking help everyone. I don't care who you are, but especially if you're a police officer under the amount of stress they are.
I think not only police officers, I think therapy for the whole country could do a whole world of good.
For sure.
In terms of improving that situation.
And we don't have all the answers. Obviously, there's a lot of smarter people than us that are talking.
And Mark,
a lot of smarter people than us that are talking about this today. Listen to them, but it's important. It's important to care about this. That's
to that point, Mark. Again,
to think about
disclaimer,
it.
To think
the
about
disclaimer. We're not black. Okay,
We're not.
and we're not, or any different form of minority.
Despite our very
Or police.
despite our very deep, smooth voices.
Sure.
We're not
I'm sure people are confused. So that's
Yeah.
only our perspective that we just covered. And I certainly think personally that policy changes on this subject should be spearheaded by black people in both government and law enforcement. And I hope that Donald Trump, has what it takes to step up and do the right thing.
Guys, we love you. We love America. It's gonna get better. Hang in there. So, What, you guys got anything else? I mean, we're out of time.
Yeah, stay safe.
Just
Stay
look
safe.
inward. Look inward. Try to do better. Let's all try to do better.
Also, don't forget your hand sanitizer and mask when you go loot places.
That's true. All right.
All right, guys, before we hop into a couple more stories, let's talk about our sponsor, Omaha Steaks. I got my Omaha Steaks. They were nice enough to send boxes to us. And I got to tell you guys, I went a little steak crazy over the weekend. I cooked 5 Omaha steaks.
Woohoo, baby.
That I ate all myself.
You got 5?
I 5 total, and I cooked them on the I pan fried them. And you know what I tried? I tried the move where I took them frozen, seared them for about 3 minutes on either side, and then I put them in the oven at 275 for like 15 minutes, and it was the best steak I've ever had in my life. I'll be honest with you. The meat is next level. This is meat you cannot buy at the grocery store. It's friggin' amazing. And with Father's Day coming up, it's a fantastic gift. Let's be honest. Dad's hard to shop for. But I'll tell you what, Dad is going to be really impressed when you buy him an Omaha Steak gift package with some of those premium steak cuts. I mean, like, really, I don't even know where they get this steak from.
He's going to think your taste has improved immensely.
Is it the cows in Nebraska are just happier? I don't know. It sounds like it to me. But right now,
you get a new job?
It's just, it really is meat that and I'm not just shilling for Omaha. I would because they're paying us, but it's just amazing.
Just damn delicious.
And right now, guys, Omaha Steaks is offering our listeners an access to a variety of amazing packages that are perfect to send to Dad for Father's Day. Not my dad because he's a vegetarian, but I'm still going to send him some fucking steaks because he needs to know what quality. Maybe I'll get him.
Or if you're a dad, just order a shitload and
for yourself.
Make people cook them for you.
Yeah, maybe I'll flip my dad. Maybe I'll flip my dad out of 40 years of being a vegetarian.
Has he tried an Omaha Steak?
He hasn't, but he would flip. So all you got to do, guys, is go to omahasteaks.com and enter the code FACTOR, F-A-C-T-O-R, in the search bar. Should be in the top right, and you'll see all the great options available. Many include free shipping and a free 1-pound package of the perfectly cured, incredibly thick Applewood smoked steak cut bacon. This stuff, as I said earlier in previous ad reads, I call it the thickens. This shit's so thick, it's like not even big. It's like a bacon steak, if you can imagine that.
Search bar top left, by the way.
Yep. Sorry, guys. Anyway, there's many packages available, perfect for Dad, and they're all ready to be shipped straight to his door by Father's Day. Honestly, guys, they got franks, they got burgers, they got sausages, they got a potato au gratin that I made while stoned on a Friday night, and it really hit me right where I needed to be hit with those munchies. Shut the munchies
Hits you
down.
right here.
Hits you right here. A1 steak sauce, guys. No work. These are one-step family meals, tasty and easy to make side dishes, as I was saying with the gratin, artisan desserts, and much more, guys. Omaha Steaks delivers guaranteed quality and safety for every order, so send Dad a gift of food that he will love. Make Father's Day simple. Also, if your mom is butch or not, or she just likes steaks, mom might like it too. I know Father's Day is coming up. So
Stacy Steaks?
Maybe she'll Stacy Steaks how much you love her. Anyway, guys, free shipping, free steak cut bacon. Remember to put the code FACTOR in the search bar when you go to omahasteaks.com. Father's Day is coming up. Get on it.
Nice. All right. I mean,
we're running long because America,
Well, it deserves.
has
This
having
is
a
a
problem.
day that deserves to run a little bit long.
Absolutely.
Sorry for the folks that need it shorter. But
absolutely. Yeah. But hey, I mean, with everything on, there's still a pandemic going on, guys. Isn't that?
Oh, good.
Yeah. Don't
The
forget
one
about
thing
that.
I'm excited about is that all this protesting this protesting is bigger than the pandemic, right? So it forced us to not social distance, or a lot of people to not social distance. We're getting a lot of data.
Ended the pandemic.
Getting a lot of data for this.
Basically ended social distancing.
Right. It did. A lot of herd immunity going on. So let's get a little update here. Coronavirus update: 6 million cases worldwide, over 6 million, almost 375,000 deaths. The U.S. Almost 1.9 million cases, over 105,000 deaths. Rounding out the top 5: Brazil, Russia, Spain, and the U.K. So Brazil, after all that fucking talk, is now number 2.
Well, guys, by the way, Brazil was one of the only like 2 countries to end slavery after us here in the United States.
Oh,
Did want to point.
Well, they were some of the
what,
primary.
South Africa?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, South Africa.
Well, that
And
was
then-
the primary route, right? It was Brazil to West Africa.
Yep.
Well, that was a fun route. Also, back to the predicted plug. We didn't really get to them, but www.
Oh, yeah, we did.
Predicted.org. Yeah, /promos /Hard Factor 20. Bolsonaro is now like climbed to like number 1 Latin leader to be next removed because he's done such a
complete
shitty job.
psychopath?
Yeah, because he's a psycho.
He doesn't
Well, you know-
recognize pandemics.
When you call it
'cause he's
fake
insane.
and then you end
Yeah.
up as number 2, it's
Right. Bolsonaro's in hot water. Yeah.
Right. So some of the bigger news, the Supreme Court shot down the request of a church in California to block the restrictions against their right to assemble. Justice Roberts made the vote 5-4, saying, quote, although California's guidelines place restrictions on places of worship, those restrictions appear consistent with the free exercise clause of the First Amendment. Similar to more severe restrictions apply to comparable secular gatherings, including lectures, concerts, movie showings, spectator sports, theaters. So, those places are still closed. So, I guess churches should be.
Although it doesn't matter now. Like they made that ruling before, like everyone protested in the world.
Listen,
now it's kind of like
people are going to need a lot of church after all this shit. Let me tell you.
right. I think,
No
I
shit.
think that John Roberts would have made it 5-4 in the other direction on like I'd say Monday if the vote was on Monday. I don't know.
Yep, he probably would have. Yeah.
Yeah.
Kavanaugh was, of course, one of the other ones dissenting from that sentiment, saying the church and its congregants simply want to be treated equally to comparable secular businesses. California already trusts its residents.
He's like, and they should serve beers.
Right. Kavanaugh's
exactly.
like, I like to think of church gatherings as bars, and I want them as full as possible.
Right. Yeah. So
Things that
I
Squeeder
just
would like to go
rewatched
to.
I just rewatched his love beers thing a little while ago.
Oh, man.
It's always
Say what you will
Fantastic.
about Kavanaugh, but I would definitely drink 10 beers with him.
Yeah. I don't know.
quickly.
Maybe.
Yeah.
And then also in some good news, 2 Chinese firms say they'll have a vaccine by December. China's Wuhan Institute of Biological Products and the Beijing Institute of Biological Products announced they're entering phase 2. Good news if we can trust it. I think it might pass on the Chinese coronavirus vaccine.
Right,
I
we
don't
have
know.
another one in America also slated for December. So
They had
Right.
the goddamn vaccine the whole time, guys. They had the vaccine the whole
stop.
time.
Oh, stop it.
Yeah.
Pat's a thinning the herd guy.
No, I'm not a thinning the herd. I don't think it's cool. I'm just saying.
No,
like,
I mean you're a conspiracy theorist. They're thinning the herd.
right,
They have-
by that logic, that means that everybody
You're-
basically would have been in on it, kind of, right? Or
it's
you're
an
saying that-
overpopulation thing.
I don't actually believe that.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
They know how to keep
Or
secrets.
do
real well.
I?
Yeah.
So, and then Mark sent me a link. Some monkey in India stole some like blood samples.
Oh yeah, multiple monkeys in India
Yeah.
in a lab. They like attacked the lab tech and then stole like 3 vials or more of COVID-19.
Yeah.
And then they just left. They escaped the lab, and then they were like seen up in like
Trees, yeah.
Up in like trees, like trying to bite into the COVID-19. They were just like, "Oh my god, these monkeys! They were the macaques, I think."
Did they ever get into it? Like,
No, they recovered the samples. They were undamaged, so there's no fear. There's no fear of because there's like 10 million macaques over there. They're like the ones that steal like the motorcycles and the wallets and all that stuff.
Well,
that was the one that
like-
grabbed the kid, right?
Yes, exactly. It was that like
Yeah, and the media
all hell would break loose if the macaques got coronavirus.
Well, yeah,
Like,
and the media is
whoa.
treating it like the vials were like something from like Alcatraz that's gonna like or the movie where that vial gets released and everyone dies.
Yeah,
that's the way they were
yeah.
fucking treating it. It would have been pretty harmless, I think.
But if the macaques could, I don't even know if they're susceptible to it because a lot
Yeah.
of animals aren't. But if the macaques got coronavirus, that would be a big problem.
Are you talking about The Rock? Wes?
The Rock,
When-
I am. Yes,
The
yes.
Rock,
Yeah,
yeah.
when the oh man, that's bad.
The Rock was a great movie.
was good.
Yeah,
But they
Stanley
they got-
Goodspeed was there to
They
save
retrieved
the
the
day.
vials.
Yeah.
All is well in India.
My wife was the prom queen.
Yeah. Nick Cage, baby.
Yeah, Stanley Goodspeed.
So keep your masks on, but bigger stuff going on. But the pandemic is still still going on. So
Yeah.
Cool.
Speaking of, I said earlier, wear your mask and do your hand sanitizer. I saw some of my favorite videos were people who were just hand sanitizing everybody during the protests.
that was great.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, like,
Oh, there's gonna be some bumps.
there's going to be some bumps for sure. There's no doubt about it. There's going to be a new wave potentially. And I don't have health care, so I'm going to stay indoors potentially for a while.
I do think it's interesting that I think we talked about this a little bit on Friday, but this last week was like, at least in my like small polling of people I know, it seemed like it was the worst week mentally for people, and then it ended with these protests. I think that there was like something seriously brewing. And
it's like that thing you can say like this was the worst week, but you can say it like every week now. Like I'm the heaviest I've ever been,
right.
And you keep gaining weight, and then you can say that next week and next
Yeah,
week.
the lockdown, obviously everybody being locked in their houses, and then seeing what the George Floyd video, and then it leading to like it was like you said, Pat, a perfect storm of fucking up everybody's mental health.
Yeah.
But I think things are going to get better, guys. I think things are going to get better.
I do too. I mean,
Yeah.
They can't get much worse.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're going to get significantly better.
Going downhill from here would be hard.
Yeah.
All right. Oddly, guys, we're going to end it on a positive note today. SpaceX and NASA launched up the Crew Dragon atop the Falcon 9 rocket on Saturday. And they blasted that sucker straight up to the International Space Station. It was a perfect launch. I don't know if did you guys watch the live stream?
I didn't watch it live, but I saw the replays.
I watched the replay. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't watch it, but Will, can you explain to me what happened the day before?
Okay. So the day before, they were like pressure testing the SN4, which is a different ship. That's like the big one that's like going to go to Mars one day, allegedly. And it just exploded. I think that's how
it was a completely different prototype. Like it was a completely different rocket. That looked like a big chode, and the other one looked like a thin.
Yeah.
Totally different use.
Totally different. Yeah.
But it was like obviously ominous. Like you see that big fucking explosion on a NASA like feed
up to the
day
stakes.
before.
Yeah. Then the astronauts have 20 hours, and then they're going up. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So I watched the whole live stream on NASA. It was awesome. It was really, really cool. It was like SpaceX was like running the operation. NASA was overseeing it. Everything went perfectly.
Super impressive.
Oh yeah, that thing landed back on the thing in the ocean.
is
That
that?
was crazy.
The sea landing was
so
insane.
impressive.
Yeah. First time in 9 years, right? Like that this.
Yeah,
type
10
of,
or since 2011.
Yeah,
right?
and like
Yeah.
when it made it out of orbit, like because it was cool because you had camera angles like on the outsides of the ships now, so you can watch the whole thing. Like, and it goes up into space and then it ejects the rocket from it. Like it was fucking badass.
What a thrill that must have been. Did you see back to the how bad things are, and they're obviously going to get significantly better? Did you see Andy Milonakis' tweet?
No,
Yeah, about it was rude of them to leave all of us behind. Yeah.
No. He said, I got it pulled up right
Or he
here.
said good choice.
He said good choice. So Andy Milonakis said, congratulations to the astronauts that left Earth today.
Yeah.
Good choice. It now has 3.5 million likes at the time of this recording, and is the third most liked tweet on Twitter of all time. After one day, it will clearly become number one. Number one is 4.1 million by Barack Obama. Number two is in the high threes. He's going to have Andy Milonakis. I'm not a such and such head, but don't call me a such and such head. He's going to have the number one tweet of all fucking time.
Should we end the show
everyone is advantageous. Like everyone's like jealous of the astronauts that left the fucking.
Oh yeah.
Should we end the show with a Three Loco song? Him and Dirt Nasty and Riff Raff. Their hip hop group. But in all seriousness, what the fuck were they thinking testing a potentially faulty rocket the day before that had nothing to do with the rocket they're launching on Sunday? Nerve wracking for the families of those astronauts.
I think he was punking the haters like me.
You think he purposely
I think Elon doesn't care. They needed to do that test and they needed to proceed. He's always behind schedule, so he's just not stopping. He also doesn't care about the coronavirus. He's not going to stop doing his tests when they need to be done. So,
would have loved to have been a part of that little private conversation with Elon and the astronauts after that thing blew up.
Oh yeah, I think they were pretty comfortable with it. I saw a tweet from one of them beforehand, like praising the ship that they were going to be on. The astronauts Bob and Doug are docked now officially in the ISS, where another set of astronauts will presumably take that Crew Dragon they flew up there and drop back down to Earth with it sometime soon. It was just fucking incredible.
That's so crazy.
Yeah,
Dude, to be up in the International Space Station is pretty insane.
Yeah.
And I think they're supposed to come for us in a couple months or something. I don't know.
And that was the first one that we've ever launched off U.S. soil since 2011. First astronauts we've launched off. So it was really cool. And it's just so crazy that it happened amidst all the civil unrest caused by the murder of George Floyd. A weekend for the history books for sure, for America and the world probably. And that's going to do it for Hard Factor. As always, thank you for listening. Stay safe out there and have a great fucking day.
Oh, yeah!